Guys, this is the Peugeot 2008 or 2008 or 2008. However you want to call it, it's the new Peugeot under Burmaz. It's the first new model, totally new model under Burmaz, locally assembled in Gurun. And actually, it wants to compete in the B segment, which is right now so populated and so crowded, because you have this, you have the Ativa, you have the Kona, you have the HRV, you have the X50, and there's definitely a few more coming along this year at least. So can this compete? Remember, this is a slightly between mass market and premium, so semi-premium offering, 127,000 ringgit. And for that, you get a definitely distinctive B7 SUV. But is it any good? Let's just find out. The first thing the Peugeot wants to do is impress you from the front, because it is really distinctive. Look at how this headlight cluster kind of like makes up a fang down here. You know, the whole lion, big cat kind of thing. Those are fangs. That's the idea. So LED DRLs, LED headlights, distinctive front end over here. You get a lot of these, you know, gloss black slats. The gloss black theme runs around the entire car. The wheels themselves, very nice, 17-inch numbers over here, diamond cut. You know, two-tone silver black design. It's very nice. If you're afraid of every SUV, every crossover being a kind of, you know, copy of another one, like everything kind of blends into the same thing, this isn't that. This is trying to be the anti of that. So as you're going along, notice that it's intentionally more boxy, not like just the kind of like wedge shape of a usual SUV. You get more angular, you know, accents to it. So again, the gloss black kind of looks good. I didn't like the white on black at first, but now this whole panda theme, it's nice. If you have a Mazda, everything is subtly sculpted, right? But over here, it's more angular, it's more brutal, I guess. So you have this triangular shape. In a Mazda, you won't even see this curve. Right over here, you see the line very clearly. And this whole thing runs to the back where it kind of expands again to a triangle over here. I don't know how to describe it. It's not French, it's almost Japanese in a way. It embraces angularity. And not like other Peugeots too, because other Peugeots aren't quite this angular. The headlights are like a claw. This is also like a claw, but you know, filed down, kind of like this, retracted claw. Nice. Despite this car having a 1.2 liter, a small 1.2 liter turbocharged petrol engine, you do get two tailpipes. And from what I can tell, they're real. Wow. 3 cylinders, 130 PS and 230 Newton meters of torque. That's actually not that bad for a small little 1.2 liter puny engine. And you know, actually from the engine bay over here, it doesn't look totally lost. It actually looks substantial. Turbocharger right there. Engine cover is not that bad. Actually, it's a good looking engine cover for a tiny engine. Well done, Peugeot. So opening the boot. No fancy kick sensor, just a button and some hydraulics, and you have it 434 liters of space, which is pretty decent. Just like the back seats, there's quite a big lip over here. Not that big though. And underneath, you do get a space-saver rear wheel. If you want more space, you can fold down the seats, 60-40 split for even more room. So this is the newest version of the iCockpit. Essentially, you have a split infotainment screen and split up from the digital gauge cluster. In this case, you would want to look over the wheel. So the wheel itself, the steering wheel, it's actually more compact. It's actually compressed this way and this way. So the point is you look over it into the cluster instead of through it. That's the main gimmick. Does it work better? Well, it's fine. Besides all that, you do get soft touch plastics, you do get this faux carbon weave effect, which is nice to look at. Gloss black. The materials in here, despite being a B segment, is really pretty good. I think it's almost on par what you get with the actual premium brands. The buttons are actually quite minimal. You do get only a handful, but they are this really nice, I don't know if they're actually metal, but it does feel good. Kind of like piano key effect on the buttons. Besides that, it's all just open space. And it is very stylish, very posh, but only a B segment. That's pretty impressive. A couple of things. You do get this cluster ahead of you. Like most every car has a digital cluster ahead of you. But besides this, you get actually a 3D effect, which I didn't believe when I first saw the car at launch. But like whatever, 3D effect, it's just a gimmick. But actually there is a real parallax effect when you have the clusters on, because I don't know exactly how they do it. They have a background and the actual readouts themselves are on a different layer. I'm not even sure how they do that. And even when you signal, it's not on the screen, it's on this little thing over here. That's really neat. And you can actually, you know, put your hand through it. It's 3D, so look, you have a depth effect over here. It's pretty cool. So the first thing about the 2008 interior, at the back seats at least, is before you get in, you realize there's a big hump over here. You want to slide into an SUV by just sliding in because it's high off the ground, right? But in this case, it's like a car. You have a big hump over here. Step in again, close the door. So that's how you get in. No sliding in for an SUV of this size. You have about a fist, maybe 2 fists of space between me and someone my size driving, but definitely you have someone taller than me or bigger than me, and I would have much less room. It's a nice place, but not a lot of space. But for $127K for your semi-premium B7 SUV, you don't get air conditioning vents at the rear, you don't get USB ports. Nope, no USB ports. You do get like this little net, which I guess you can put a phone, and that's it. So the more I drive the 2008, and the more I'm aware of the things that will compromise, where Burma's had to cut corners a little bit to make sure that this came under a certain price. So for example, these buttons over here, they feel cheap, macam keropok lah, betul-betul. Like this is such a terrible feeling plastic. But then you get to the screen. And so when you go into a reverse, you'll uncover the fact that this has a reversing camera and a 360-degree, you know, surround camera to make sure that you're parking correctly and you're straight and aligned and everything. But the resolution is really, really terrible. The camera quality, the surround camera quality is like my first smartphone, my first camera phone. And it is the camera. The camera is really, really low res, guys. Let's say I want to increase fan speed on the air conditioning, or I want to increase temperature or whatever. I have to reach all the way here on this far side of the screen for the button, and then it comes out on the screen over here. I'm gonna tap this or this to get where I want to be on the controls, which isn't great because I have to always, you know, look to where I'm tapping on the screen. I can't just like figure it out with the real button. So I've noticed that for some reason, when I press the stop to turn on the engine, it doesn't do anything. I have to press it like a couple of times. It doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything. Why can't I turn off this car? My handy touch and go fly spotter thing over here doesn't really fit. You have all this space behind the pocket that doesn't do anything. Why can't you just make a full length door pocket? Come on, Peugeot. So I guess some things will never ever change because yes, it's a plush Peugeot, that's great, but also the French can't seem to figure out a glove box because they do still put all the fuses in here behind the glove box entrance. And so, yeah, it opens full length, but you can't store anything here because it'd be squashed. You only have a little basket over here, which is not very much. You could put like some tissues and some loose change, that's about it. So okay, you have this door panel over here. You get a tweeter over here and like I guess a woofer down here or something. But then you have this kind of like cutouts down below. Like there should be like a badge, like a fancy name, JBL, Harman Kardon, but they just didn't put anything there. So, about this car, it's a B segment SUV, and that's saying actually quite a lot, because when you say B segment SUV, the market is so saturated right now, it's so full of competitors that you kind of know what to expect. You have, of course, the Proton X50, you have, you know, the Ativa more recently, Hyundai Kona, HR-V, and now you have this, a French entrant. How about that? And it's the return of Peugeot. But can we say that Peugeot is back? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing though, this is trying really hard to get me to like it because of its styling, the interior, just the way it drives. It's a very likable car. It's got character. You can just tell from the outside it's trying to be characterful, isn't it? Okay. First of all, refinement is really good. You do get a little bit of that, you know, the kind of characteristic three-cylinder note. You know, three-cylinder engines in the BMW, you know, the 3 Series, the i8, they sound really good. But maybe it's to do with the way it's tuned, with the way the exhaust is. Maybe, I have no idea, but something about the way this thing sounds does sound characteristically three-cylindered. Only when I go under load, then some of it comes across. It's a very punchy engine, 130 PS, 213 Newton meters of torque, and that's quite a lot of power and torque for a tiny B7 SUV. It is on the firmer side of comfortable. Let me just say that again. It is comfortable, but it is on the firmer side of comfortable. And this is the kind of chassis that you can just throw in. It's not sharp, it's not super sharp. It turns in pretty okay, but then it loses interest in the corner almost. Like it just gets a bit vague mid-corner. And also the steering, because the steering wheel is so small and, you know, the turning circle is so tight and the steering is quite light and fast. It does add the sensation that you're driving quite a fun little car. You know, you can chuck it around, you can move it about. It's agile. Okay, so is Peugeot back? Sort of. They definitely have a better list of ingredients because under Burma's, they've been doing a good job with Mazda, and Peugeot is sort of like in that same position where they kind of, you know, premium, but not quite, mass market, but not quite, you know, in this sort of like middle ground like Mazda is. I think Mazda is trying actively to be perceived as premium, not so much Peugeot. They're content to be like, you know, in that middle ground. But you can definitely see why Peugeot chose a B segment SUV as its debut vehicle, like a revamped Peugeot under Burma's new distributor. They want to make a splash. So of course the B segment SUV segment will get them the most attention. So you get the most attention from selling a B segment SUV, and you stand to make the most volume sales because apparently everyone wants this size and this type of vehicle. Like I said, it is the most characterful, not the most spacious. So you have a little bit of a game of toss-up because it isn't the best in all categories. In fact, in most categories, I think it would actually fall short of some of the other ones because on price, 127,000 ringgit. That's not cheap, okay? You have the X50 going for under 100,000 ringgit. You have the Ativa well below 100,000 ringgit. You also have the HRV, which is around that price. So you have competition. And in that case, the HRV wins in space. The X50 might win on just all the features, all the tech features. The Kona, I think, drives better than this. So where does this leave the 2008? Character, style. This thing gets looks like no other because you're driving something so distinctively styled and sort of like sort of the opposite of the usual, you know, of the usual B7 SUV that just kind of like blends into everything else. It has AEB, although I think they call it active brake, smart brake support, whatever. Just call it AEB, guys. Everyone knows AEB should be standard. Airbags are called airbags, right? You don't have special airbags in different cars called different things. They're all just airbags. Just call it AEB, autonomous emergency braking. This thing has that. It's camera based. You have blind spot monitoring. You have lane keep assist, and you have a 360 camera system, which doesn't work quite that good because from what I can gather, as you reverse, it takes snapshots of the terrain you just passed over. It's not a live feed, not a live feed to what's going on around you. It's just a snapshot. Right now, I'm doing slow speeds. Okay, I'm doing about 70 kilometers per hour, and it's very refined. On the highway, it's where it does best because honestly, you can look at the specs and go like, okay, 1.2 turbo engine, little B7 SUV, 6-speed automatic. What can it do really? How can it impress me? But then you figure out that you're going about 120 over the speed limit. And you barely even realize, because in 6th gear, this thing, you know, quiets down to like below 2,000 RPM, and you barely even notice any vibration. It feels like you're doing 80 at 110 in 6th gear. It's really quite impressive. So if you have that sensation that you're in a Conti vehicle, that's it right there. And I was thinking too, you know, like if you were looking for a B7 SUV, but then you had higher sights, maybe you wanted to buy a Mercedes-Benz GLA, X1 from BMW, maybe an Audi Q3. Yes, this will cost significantly less. This Peugeot will cost significantly less, and it can't quite compete with, you know, the badge snobbery and maybe even the fit and finish and the build of those cars. But then, if you're in the market for any of those other vehicles in the B segment as a new vehicle, like, you know, the Kona, the X50, the Ativa, the HRV, this kills it in terms of like just being a solidly put together product because it's so tight. You can feel the quality in this thing. And it becomes a much better proposition if, let's say, you're in the market for a used GLA or a used X1 or a used Q3. Then this becomes really interesting because they'd be the same price as a new 2008. And why wouldn't you get this? It's about the same size. It drives really nice. It's very well appointed inside. Punchy engine. You get a 5-year warranty. You get 3 years free maintenance. Why wouldn't you get this? But is Peugeot back? Geez, I don't know how to answer that question. Look, this stands to be the best-selling Peugeot out of all their cars they could have brought in internationally to Malaysia. This is the one that stands the most chance of being a success. And here they are, off on the right foot, selling it right away. And so yeah, I think Peugeot is back just by the fact they're selling a very competent B7 SUV, and in some cases the most desirable B7 SUV, at a good price right from the get-go. The 208 in 2020, everyone's most hated year, won European Car of the Year. And I'm pretty sure last year, Peugeot actually was number 2 in terms of sales volume for Europe. Number 2. Number 1 was Volkswagen. Number 2 was Peugeot. You don't get to be a number 2. You don't get to be European Car of the Year by being crap. And people's perception in Malaysia of Peugeot hasn't been great. It's not been crap, but it hasn't been great. And I think it's Burma's opportunity right now to kind of like turn the tide on that perception, because they do make really good cars, and I'm sitting in one right now.